Welcome to Geosynthetics Geotalk podcast, where we discuss geosynthetics and affiliated issues in civil, environmental, and geotechnical engineering. I'm Chris Kelsey, editor of geosynthetica.net. Mining activities are integral to the success of an enormous number of industries, and these are industries that are inextricably part of our lives: communications, construction, healthcare, energy, transportation. Essentially, everything in modern life is connected to mining at some level. But mining is not easy, and the scale of mines continues to grow. Now properly designed and monitored, mining activities can leave troubling legacies for communities. We talked with Tom Williams, a 40-year veteran of disturbed land reclamation work, much of which has been in connection with mining. Tom is the VP of Environmental Affairs for Fiore Gold US Incorporated, and he's also one of the featured speakers at the International Erosion Control Association 2018 Conference and Exhibition. IECA 2018 will be held February 11th to the 14th in Long Beach, California. Tom, thanks so much for being with us. You have considerable experience in disturbed land reclamation, about 4 decades worth. Foremost, can you tell us a bit about your career and the types of sites you tend to work on with your reclamation expertise?
Yes. Chris, I started my career in 1978 with the Homestake Mining Company, and I worked on the Pinch Project, which is a uranium mine located in central Colorado. And I, through my career, have worked primarily in mining, but also I've done some pipeline work, power plants, transmission lines, landfills, and roads. But that being said, most mines also have all of those things on them as well.
Yeah.
For the majority of my career, I've traveled around the world as a consultant and prepared reclamation plans for projects from tropical to desert ecosystems and from sea level to over 12,000 foot in elevation. I focused for a number of projects on direct revegetation of mining waste, and by that I mean that they were soils that were heavily contaminated as mining wastes, and we had to create soil to put over the top of them in order to revegetate and stabilize things such as tailings and waste rock where no topsoil was available. So we had to create a soil for those projects in which we had to bring in organic matter and amendments and adjust the particle size of the soil so that it wouldn't be too erodible. And a lot of my projects were like that. A lot of them were also just your basic modern mine where we would salvage topsoil and put it back. And those are much easier projects, I would say. The erosion and sediment control isn't any easier, but getting something to grow on it was easier.
Yeah.
And currently, and for the past 8 years, I've been with Fiore Gold, and my projects are now both in Nevada, and they're in desert conditions with 12 inches of precip or less.
Okay, wow. With Geosynthetica, a lot of the content we work with on the site has to do with geosynthetics, which are involved in many stages of mining. But in terms of the reclamation work, does your kind of work ever work with, say, geomembranes in a final cover system where you might be putting soil over top, or are you working on slightly different aspects of a mine, reclaiming the site than where geosynthetics might typically be used?
Well, I'd say the vast majority of mine land reclamation is done without geosynthetics, and that's just because of the scale of the projects, and because regulations encourage flatter, more stable slopes. Just a lot of the area to be reclaimed isn't steeper than 3-to-1, and just don't really need geosynthetics to stabilize the slopes. However, on all projects, mine-related, there are drainage systems and occasional cover systems that do require or they're greatly benefited by geosynthetics. And turf reinforcement mats are one example of that. Where we would use them to enhance drainage systems so that less riprap had to be produced and used. Some mining wastes have to be covered to reduce infiltration, and then geosynthetics are a great help to be put over the top of those facilities in order to then place a soil and get something growing over them. Geosynthetics are most often used when the slopes exceed 3-to-1 and are not extensive. There's also evapotranspiration ponds that are built on mine sites quite often, and those usually require different layers and geosynthetics in different places to separate layers and for other needs in them. So I'd say as a percentage of the project, geosynthetics might not be a very high percentage, but they are used, and given the scale of your typical mine site, that still runs into quite a bit of geosynthetics.
Yeah. Taking a look now with the kind of experience you bring to this, I think of an area of like landfilling and how much it has changed, say, in the past 20 years with very different types of waste streams going into these facilities, which changes how you might design or monitor them, how you evaluate, your post-closure care. With the reclamation, are you seeing, mines getting bigger and bigger and things like that? But on the reclamation side, are the challenges very different now versus, say, 20 or 30 years ago?
Well, that's interesting. The challenges on mine sites are many, and they typically include how to stabilize large areas of disturbed land where there may be limited topsoil available to put back. How do you establish landforms that can be stabilized with the materials that you have? How do you amend the soils so they can support the appropriate vegetation? How do you stabilize channels at the lowest cost because you might have miles and miles of them? And how best to protect the initial seeding from erosion until the vegetation reaches a point where it can hold and stabilize the soil.
Yeah.
Projects have gotten larger, and expectations have moved from, hey, nobody's done this before, so give it your best shot, to, oh, that's old. So we are expected to be able to do this now, with the understanding that it may take a while. And that's still not always as easy as people expect. Mm-hmm. However, some things have changed drastically over my career, and I think one thing is our understanding of what makes a good soil, what makes a soil self-sustaining, what amendments are needed in the supply chain to get those amendments have all improved. The soil analysis industry has improved from more and better techniques to lower cost and faster turnaround times. Seed and seed sources have improved. The mining industry's understanding of what reclamation costs and how doing it right the first time can save money over the entire project has improved, and that helps a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't think the challenges have changed other than projects have gotten larger, but our ability to meet those challenges has gotten better and easier over time. There's still a long way to go, but I think it's getting better.
Well, that's great. In terms of how we make things better, we got to get to, the more practical side of things, which you might call your toolbox, what you bring to the site. So in terms of, your environmental work, revegetation, erosion, and sediment control, what are the types of solutions you're often working with?
For me, as I said, a lot of my projects have involved developing a soil from nothing, from pure sand, still material, or even hazardous material into a soil. So the things I use a lot are soil analyses, geochemistry, humidity cell tests, particle size analysis, so that we can create a soil that's not going to be highly erodible. And then soil correction techniques. There's a number of those that a lot of my projects, we've developed those as we went along for whatever was needed on the particular project. now there's computerized geomorphic topographical design programs that you can get to take a waste dump that's basically built in a square form to more something that fits into the natural environment around it.
Yeah.
Biological and or natural channel armoring is used quite a bit more now, and that's a tool we use as often as we can with turf reinforcement mats and kind of a self-generating riprap process that we use.
Sure.
And then all the basic revegetation techniques and erosion control techniques that you'd use on any project, we use those as well. And then now, more and more often, climate prediction modeling is coming into play. And that's for not only the actual construction of a site, but the permitting of a site to predict what will be needed, say, 10, 20 years into the future on a mine site. Will actually go to the length of predicting what our climate will be like at that point, and we'll work backward from that.
Yeah. With how these things change, these approaches or the materials you get to use on site, there's a pretty significant innovation cycle in all of these markets, whether we're talking biotic approaches or we're talking modeling tools, software. How do you stay current for your business and for your client interactions as you explain to, on the client side, why such, whatever solution you choose is really going to be the most effective for the site at that time?
Well, a number of ways, I would say, but probably for me, conferences such as IECA, the American Engineering and Mining Association, or AEMA, the Nevada Mining Association, and the interaction with other reclamation and ecological restoration professionals, usually that I meet at events sponsored by those groups. So, there's papers and research that's done from an academic standpoint, but in the mining reclamation field, most of the work that's done is proprietary. It's done by a mining company for a specific project. And although you can go to an agency and get that information, it's much easier to go to events and conferences like IECA puts on and interact with the people actually doing that work. So,
yeah. Now, in your experience, what's really the hardest thing about achieving success in reclamation?
Well, I think, if people come and listen to my talk, I think they'll learn a lot more about this question or the answer to this question from my talk. But I think by far it's understanding the period of time necessary to stabilize the soil until it achieves a self-sustaining level of establishment. Mm-hmm. If you know how long you've got to stabilize that soil for before it erodes away, then you can minimize the level of protection you have to design into the project. And predicting this is largely an inexact science now, or it's a guess. And since periods of drought or excessive precipitation drastically affects it, the changing climate we're experiencing now adds to that difficulty. Because you really should stabilize for the longest term the project may be at risk.
Yeah.
And that can add a lot of upfront expense. It's generally easy to show now the cost-benefit analysis of doing it correctly, though.
Yeah. As you said, the mining industry is getting a lot smarter about do things better up front, and you save a lot more in the long run.
Yes, that is definitely the case, and it's gotten easier over the years, in my opinion, to be able to show a mining company, the tools to be able to show a mining company the cost benefit has gotten easier over time.
Yeah. Tom Williams is VP of Environmental Affairs for Fiore Gold. Tom, thank you for sharing your insight.
Welcome, Chris. Thank you.
more information on Fiore's work, visit fioregold.com. That's Fiore. And hear Tom Williams share 40 years of disturbed land reclamation experience, as well as get to know other speakers who will be discussing related topics in mining, erosion, and sediment control in affiliated sectors. Visit IECA.org. Click through to the events section for the latest on IECA's annual conference and get information on the early bird registration deadline in mid-January, access the full technical program, get to know who's exhibiting, and much more. Thank you for listening.